Howdy, everyone. Today is Tuesday, August 22nd, 2023, and the time is 6:30 p.m. We're here for the regular session of the Coppell City Council. We do have a quorum present, so I'm calling the meeting to order. We will be convening into executive session in the first floor conference room. At the end of the executive session, I'll come back out and announce that we're going into work session, at which time the public will be invited to join us. Thank you very much. Convene into the regular session of the Coppell City Council at 7:35.
Yeah, I almost sat down for a minute.
Was it in there? Because I don't remember saying specific.
Good afternoon, everybody. The time is 7:36 p.m., and we're here for the regular session of the Coppell City Council. We're going to defer our work session until the end of the meeting, so we'll move directly into the council meeting. Just as a reminder, persons wishing to speak at the citizens' appearance or our public hearings must sign the appropriate register outside the council chamber and list your residence address. Tonight we have Reverend Sumesh Jacob of the First United Methodist Church to give our invocation, and after that we will recite the Pledge of Allegiance, so please remain standing. Sumesh?
Thank you, Mayor. Let us spend a moment in silence, remembering the situation of war in Ukraine that continues, the ethnic conflict and religious persecutions in India and Pakistan, and the hurricane and rains in California and the wildfire destruction in Hawaii. Let us pray. O God, you have made us in your own image, and by your Spirit you work to redeem us through Jesus, your Son. Look with compassion on the whole human family. Take away the arrogance and hatred which infect our hearts. Break down the walls that separate us. Unite us in bonds of love, and work through our struggle and confusion to accomplish your purposes on earth, that in your good time all nations and races may serve you in harmony around your heavenly throne. So guide the nations of the world into the way of justice and truth, and establish among them that peace which is the fruit of righteousness. You are the source of all wisdom and understanding, and so be present with these who take counsel here in our city council's meeting to continue doing the work of our community. Bless them that they may consult together for the common good. Direct their thoughts and words, concerns and deliberations, that all their decisions may be pleasing to you and be for the welfare of all in this city of Coppell. Through Jesus Christ our Lord we pray. Amen.
Item number 6, we're privileged to have a presentation on our citywide water usage from Mr. Garza. Mike?
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Thank you. And tonight, I just want to give you a brief, quick update on our current water usage status. But first, just a quick reminder that we do purchase our water from the City of Dallas Water Utilities, and we get a current maximum supply of about 18.5 million gallons per day. We also have a drought contingency and water conservation plan in place, substantially in alignment with the City of Dallas strategies. Now, our conservation plan plays a vital role in maintaining a responsible approach to water usage. This plan outlines specific triggers that guide us in determining when to initiate different stages of conservation. For instance, moving to stage 2 conservation is triggered by a couple of conditions. First, when the water demand exceeds 90% of our 18.5 million gallons a day supply, which is equivalent to about 16.65 million gallons per day. And if we do that for 5 consecutive days. The second is when our ground storage reservoirs cannot recover for 2 consecutive days. So every summer we deal with elevated water demand. It's nothing new, and it's not uncommon. Last summer was especially challenging due to the record high temperatures, and we narrowly avoided implementing stage 2 restrictions, thankfully to a timely rain event that occurred, and it helped stabilize our usage patterns. Well, this summer we face a similar high demand, but the situation is compounded by the absence of any substantial rainfall. With the temperatures consistently exceeding 100 degrees this summer stands as to be one of the driest on record in our region. Our dedicated city staff has been diligently managing our daily water supply to avert the need for a supply increase. Such an increase would lead to higher rates for our customers. So on this slide here, just to give you some idea of what brought us to that stage 2 conservation. In late July, you can see the last week of July, with temperatures over 100 degrees, we slowly started creeping up supply flow from DWU. The chart on the upper left shows the daily supply flow, and in years past, this trend was to steadily increase. So we typically went, as you can see, 14.9, 15.5, 15.9, 16.3 in that last week of July. Well, this was the first time that we'd experienced a jump from a 16 MGD to 18.5 in one day. And then, moving on further for the next week, we continued at that 18.5 for several days. Now, on July 31st and August 1st, we met one of those requirements of the Stage 2 conservation triggers, which was our ground storage reservoirs did not recover for those 2 consecutive days. And then as we continued on the 18.5 for the next several days, we met the other requirement of 5 consecutive days over that 90% threshold. And had we continued on that trend of continuing with the 18.5, we would have needed to take additional water supply from DWU, so we decided to implement the Stage 2 requirement on August 7th at midnight. Now, we wouldn't have run out of water. We would have just needed to take an additional supply, which would be an increase in our water rates if we were to do that. And so after we implemented Stage 2 on August 7th, as you can see, the next 2 charts on the bottom of these slides are the last couple of weeks. We have leveled out our usage for the last couple of weeks. Now, if we look out for the next 10-day forecast, we have 100 degree plus continuing without any rain in sight. So as long as we are managing the supply and abiding by Stage 2, we will not need to increase our supply this year. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Council, you have any questions for Mr. Garza? So I had one. We're still going to have about, from what I was looking at, another 10 days of plus 100. We were actually starting to trend up toward the end of last week. Is there any reason to let you think that that's going to drop back down?
As long as Mondays are usually our highest usage, and Tuesday, Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays are typically our lowest usage days. And so as long as we continue to abide by the Stage 2, we should stay at that relatively level between 16 and 18 million.
Okay.
And so, but you're right, the temperature is going to continue to increase.
Yeah. And again, this is not a water supply
Correct.
topic. It's a rate.
It's a managing our supply
rate
versus the rates, yes.
Thank you. Councilmember Mayor Pro Tem, I'm sorry.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor. I know when we implement the Stage 2, I guess the odd number, even number housing, they have certain days. Do we actually see whether that's actually being, they're actually abiding by that, or do we just go on with a good faith that they are going to go by?
We do have a good team in our utility billings department that is monitoring usage. And we do reach out to customers when we notice that there's an increase in usage. And some folks may not understand or know that we're on a conservation, so we make sure we educate, we send out notices and reach out to them. And it may be a leak that they're not aware of, but fortunate we have a system that can detect those types of leaks, and we're able to reach out and notify and educate that we are in Stage 2 for compliance.
Okay, when you say reach out, by what means?
Phone call.
Phone call?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Let's hope we don't have to have you back up here again this year.
I hope so. Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 7 are our citizens' appearances. Persons wishing to speak must sign the register and list your address. Presentations by individuals shall be limited to 2 minutes each. and individual speaker time may be extended for an additional 2 minutes with the approval of a majority of the council members present. Individuals signed up to speak will be called in the order that they signed up. No personal attacks by any speaker shall be made against any member of the council, mayor, individual, group, or corporation. There will be no comments or deliberations from the City Council due to the Texas Open Meetings Record Act. Once the timer sounds at 2 minutes, the City Secretary will cut in and make a request to the council if they would extend the speaker's time for an additional 2 minutes. We do have 2 people that have signed up to speak tonight, and first on the list is Ms. Barbara Bailey. Ms. Bailey, you also signed up to speak on 2 different items,
Yeah,
as well as a public hearing. Was that your intent?
I was confused, so I'm not sure, but I signed up on everything, so I couldn't, you could eliminate me, but you couldn't tell me I didn't do it.
Okay.
Because it was confusing.
What's
Like,
that?
Are you for or against, like, it was confusing, so I just did that.
Okay, so the for and against is one of the public hearings of an item that we're going to be voting on tonight.
Right.
And so the citizen's appearance is on any topic that you want to speak on.
Well, I wanted to speak on the fact that you're trying to raise the taxes on this 12%.
So that would be,
As well as the dangerous curves and waste of money.
Here for both.
so I think what you meant to sign up for was the citizen's appearance to talk about the sidewalks. So come on down and talk about that one. And then on the other one was you signed up for, to talk about the Coppell Crime Control and Prevention District budget.
I thought it was the thing about I wrote on there against the tax increase.
Okay, if,
So,
with
like
your,
I said, there was no one there explaining it. It was sort of confusing, and no one else had signed up on anything.
so with your permission, I'll change you from item 9 to item 11, but you're still welcome to come talk about sidewalks on the.
Okay. Oh, that's me. I forgot to put that on. I apologize. Okay, sorry. Sit there so that-
Ms. Bailey, we're waiting.
I know, I apologize for being rude. Was not my intent. We have a very busy agenda. Hi, Barbara Bailey, 232 Plantation Drive. I was coming again about to the city council about the sidewalks on Plantation and other parts of Coppell too, but particularly in my neighborhood. And what I wanted to bring up was there's always a lot of half-truths when people talk about this. Because, like, you had Corey, your ADA person, and she talks about the direction, which I've never talked about the direction at all. I'm fine with whatever direction she wants. What I am concerned about, she talks about the direction of the curb ramps. I'm talking about the sides of the curb ramps and those giant, cement things you stuck in front of our, on our streets that are so dangerous because you can't see them in the dappled shade of the sun. You can't see these things. You can't see them at night. And you guys put that, or somebody did, reflector strips, but people don't walk around with flashlights on their ankles. They don't do anything. And there aren't, and it's all half-truths every time. And then you had the accessology guy come, and you said it was going to be a report, but it wasn't a report. He came and he talked, and all he did was say the same thing. The direction is the best. Nobody talks about what the problem is. The problem is the sides of the curb ramps. Nobody's talking about the direction of the curb ramps. And then there was all that business about there wasn't enough right-of-way. Well, that's because you made such a giant radius in the street, you put all the right-of-way in the street. Because I went out and measured it. You had 60-some feet. So it's all half-truths. And I really think that somebody who lives here, not just me, but anybody that lives here and pays taxes, and I've been paying taxes for, 37 years or something, I really think we deserve better than half-truths about this, because it's not, you're portraying it without all the facts, because you keep, not putting them.
Miss Bailey, your time is
I'm
up.
done. Okay. Can I say something really quick? I would really like you guys to fix the drain that you put in the culvert that doesn't drain anymore. It's a cesspool, and they put that's a health issue. And then they put all the dead branches behind the bushes on the curve of Plantation, and that has rats and stuff in there. And really, they could have cleaned that up when they got done.
Thank you for your comments tonight. Our second speaker tonight is Mr. Thomas Burrows.
Excuse me, Thomas Burrows, 138 Windpage. Okay, a lot of what she says I could echo. We have drainage areas that are filled with dirt. When it rains too much, and then that overflows, because it will rain again one day, then somebody has an accident, and they're going to sue the city, because a reasonable entity would have cleaned the culverts out, the drainage things out. And somebody once commented that belonged to somebody else. Oh, I think it belongs to the city. Code enforcement. I don't know why I turned this stuff in, because nobody's doing anything about it. And the most dangerous spot in town is next to Mayor May's house. So when the area next to the phone company switching area catches on fire and your house burns down, then I turned this in. But nobody's bothered to mow this. Again, street lights. I've turned in so many street lights that the vice president of Encore called me and asked me if I was working for the city. I said, I don't think so. But again, code enforcement. I don't know why I turned this stuff in. Heck, I went down and mowed part of Beltline in the median 2 months ago because nobody could fix it. And by the way, the power poles that on Beltline where they're doing the work, they need to move the telephone lines and stuff back to the main poles, because every pole that's there is one more thing to run into. And there's 11 poles up and down that area that has nothing attached to it. I don't know why they're there, waiting for someone to run into it and kill themselves. And I've mentioned the thing about the code with next to the daycare center, where the place that sells the alcohol, and where somebody could put their car through the daycare area. But of course that was okay when that was put in. But of course there wasn't. They weren't selling hard alcohol at the sushi place then. So
Mr. Burrows, your time is up.
Okay. So when someone dies about that, it's not my problem.
Thank you for your comments tonight. Item number 8 is our consent agenda. The consent agenda is routine in nature and is generally enacted in one motion. These items have been previously approved through the budget or past council action. Any item may be pulled and considered separately. Full descriptions are available on the screen. We did not have a chance to go over the agenda items at our work session that did not happen. So, council, do you have any questions or comments on consent agenda? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion. Councilmember Nevels.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve consent agenda items A through D.
Thank you. Second by Councilmember Hinojosa Smith. All in favor?
Walker, Hinojosa Smith, Carroll, Nevels, Junn, Matthew Hill in favor, none opposed, motion carries.
Thank you very much. Moving on, we have a public hearing scheduled for tonight. Come on down. Persons wishing to speak during a public hearing must sign the register and list their address. You will be called to speak in the order that you have registered. Public hearings will be limited to 5 minutes per speaker. We did have Ms. Bailey sign up for item number 9, but she made a note that she wanted to talk about the tax rate increase. So I will move her down to item number 11. This is a public hearing, so I open the public hearing and turn I open the public hearings for items 9, 10, and 11 and turn those items over to Ms. Tien.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Good evening. This evening, we do have 3 public hearings, and all 3 are related to the proposed 2023-2024 budget and property tax rate. I'm going to... Will they do it? Okay. Use it. Okay. So we'll begin this evening with the public hearing on the Crime Control and Prevention District. As required by Chapter 363 of the Local Government Code, the governing body that created the Crime Control Prevention District shall hold a public hearing on the budget adopted by the Crime Control Board. The board did hold a public hearing on June 13th. No citizens signed up to speak. The public hearing was closed, and the board approved the budget. So before I present the crime control budget, I would like to provide some history and background on the Crime Control Prevention District. First, this is a separate entity that is governed by Local Government Code 363. And as a separate entity, the district is governed by a board of 7 members, which is currently the voting members of the Coppell City Council. The Crime Control and Prevention District does receive its revenue from a 0.25% sales tax. The election of the sales tax originally passed in November of 2007, and the district began collecting sales tax in April of 2008. The initial time period was for 5 years, and so it would have expired in April of 2013. But in November of 2011, the sales tax was reauthorized for a 10-year period, with the new expiration date of April of 2023. However, in November of 2022, the 0.25% sales tax for the Crime Control Prevention District was reauthorized for another 10-year period and will expire in April of 2033. So since the 0.25% is restricted or committed to expenditures for a specific purpose under the Local Government Code 363, it is considered a special revenue fund of the city. So now that you have some background and history, we'll move on to presenting the budget. So this slide shows the revenues and expenditures of the Crime Control Prevention District. Changes to both the revenues and expenditures were made as directed by Council at the July 27th budget workshop. The changes all revolve around the addition of 8 SROs, resulting from the passage of House Bill 3 during this year's legislative session. And so as I go through the budget, I will point out the impact of this change as I walk through. So beginning with revenues, which is the graph on the left, the Crime Control and Prevention District revenues are projected to be $4.2 million, and sales tax is the primary source of revenues for this fund. And it is estimated to be $3.5 million, or 82.94% of the total revenues of the fund. We do continue to budget sales tax as though Rule 3.334 is in effect. Based on some analysis and rising prices, we did budget a 5% increase in sales tax, and that's 5% over the fiscal year 23 adopted budget. The remaining revenue is from salary reimbursement and interest income, and it is the salary reimbursement. It totals $700,368, or almost 16.6% of the revenue budgeted. And this revenue source was updated based on the direction that we received from Council at the July 27th budget workshop. So at that workshop, staff was directed to add the 8 SROs to the Crime Control District's employee count. And since Coppell ISD reimburses a percentage of the salary and benefits paid to the SROs, by the city, this revenue source was increased accordingly. The city does have an interlocal agreement with Coppell ISD related to the SRO program that was presented to Council on July 25th, and it was approved. Next are the expenditures, and moving the expenditures are $4.2 million for next fiscal year. And as I mentioned, the Crime Control Prevention District does fund the School Resource Officer program. That number again increased by 8, so it went from 5 SROs to 13 as a result of that House bill being passed. So the additional 8 SROs were added to the salary and benefits of the budget, so that is another line item that changed from what you saw on July 27th. The Crime Control and Prevention District expenditures also include funding for community and police cooperation programs such as National Night Out, the Women's Self-Defense classes, and the Citizens Police Academy. It also funds the North Texas Emergency Communications Center, which is our dispatch center that we share with Carrollton, Farmers Branch, and Addison. And it funds the jail services that are provided by Grapevine. And then last, the district expenditures also include an administrative services reimbursement from this fund to the general fund, and that's for human resources, IT, finance, and then fleet services that are provided by the general fund to this fund. In addition, the Crime Control Prevention District does include a transfer to fully fund the amount needed to fully fund the Capital Replacement Fund. So in summary, the revenues for the fiscal year 23-24 Crime Control and Prevention District are estimated to be $4,222,858, and the expenditures are $4,210,917. So this is an overview of the Crime Control and Prevention District proposed budget for fiscal year 23-24. This agenda item is the public hearing on this budget, which is required by the governing body that created the district under Local Government Code, Chapter 363. So actual adoption of the budget will occur with the adoption of the entire budget scheduled for your consideration of approval later this evening. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. And Chief Barton is here also if you have questions for him.
He's hiding in the back, I think. Councilmember Nevels.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for that presentation, Ms. Tien. Appreciate it. Just for the sake of our, I'm sure thousands of citizens who are watching tonight, just SRO, the SRO increase that we talked about, those are our school resource officers,
Yes.
correct? So, and that was based on a new law that had gone into effect from the state. So we are pitching in and doing our part to supply some additional officers, and that's going through this fund. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, cool. Just wanted to make sure everybody at home understood what SROs were and what service or what they will provide in the community. So thank you for clarification.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have a question. I think Chief Barton, you might be able to answer this, but do we actually get the resource officers that we require additional? Because I know that we were going to have some tough time finding them before the school start, but.
So it's going to take some time to find them. And I communicated that with Dr. Hunt when we discussed the 8 additional positions. It's hard to find police officers, period, right now. But we're having pretty good luck in Coppell, and I think we'll probably find them sooner than we think, but not as quick as we want.
So we haven't had any new hiring at all, or?
We are hiring officers right now actively, and we have added the 8 to the 8 vacancies. We haven't started to hire into those 8 yet.
Okay. Thank you.
You bet.
But we do have a swearing in on Friday.
We do have 3.
So, Kim, I had a question for you. Some of the language of House Bill 3, which was the legislation that required the school resource officers, there was some vague language in there about funding be available possibly from the federal government, the state government, or other local sources. I take it from this budget that we in the school district haven't been able to find those sources of income.
That is correct.
Thank you. Anybody else? Thank you. This is a public hearing, and we did not have anybody signed up to speak for the public hearing. So, council, it's any questions or comments for you? from you. What's that? Okay, did you want to do this all in one vote, or do these need to be done individually?
So if it would be okay, I think I could walk through the budget and the tax rate presentation, and then you can open the public hearing for both. And then after you have the public hearing and close it, then we can address the ordinances for this evening, if that works.
So continue on.
Okay, thank you. So now we'll move on to the next public hearing, which is on the proposed budget. As part of the budget process, a public hearing is to be conducted by the City Council to receive public input concerning the proposed 23-24 municipal budget. As part of the public hearing, I will provide a brief overview of what is included in the proposed budget. But before I present the proposed budget, I would like to take a moment to explain the budget process. The budget process began in January with Council's retreat. For staff, it began in early February with department directors and staffs developing their budgets based on information that was provided from the Council retreat. Their proposed budgets were submitted to the SFE department in mid-March. Department budget reviews with the city manager's office were held in April. A town hall meeting was then held to obtain public input in April, and staff held 5 budget workshops with council, 1 in June to present the Crime Control and Prevention District budget, and then 4 in July. The proposed budget was filed with the City Secretary's office on August 4th of 2023 and made available at the Coppell Library, as well as posted to the city's website. There's one more thing that I'd like to present before I present the budget and tax rate this evening, and that's that I'd like to thank council for your numerous hours that you've spent working on with staff on this budget. You provided guidance that resulted in a budget that continues to provide exceptional service to our community and includes items that support the community-driven 2040 plan. So again, thank you for your support and guidance through the budget process this year. So now we can begin this evening's public hearing on the proposed budget, which does again satisfy the hearing requirements established by Local Government Code Section 102.006. Total general fund revenues are projected to be almost $69.6 million for the next fiscal year. This is approximately $4.3 million or 6.6 more from the current year adopted budget. Property taxes makes up about $1.8 million of that increase. Sales tax is increasing about $1.6 million. Licenses and permits is increasing $300,000, and then charges for services is increasing $500,000. Specifically, this slide shows the 8 revenue categories that contribute to the general fund. The largest, and the first one I'll talk about, is property taxes, and it's represented by the blue area. This amount did change from what was shown to you at the July 27th budget workshop. The change was a decrease of $176,377. Council was notified on August 3rd of the change, and this change was included in the final budget that was filed with the City Secretary on August 4th. The proposed tax is the primary revenue source of the general fund, or property tax, and property taxes total about $43.9 million, or approximately 63% of the total general fund revenues. Proposed property tax revenue is based on a property tax rate that is less than the voter approval rate, but more than the no new revenue rate, as established by Chapter 26 of the Texas Tax Code. I will present more on the tax rate when we get to that section of the public hearing. The next revenue category is sales tax, and it's represented by the orange area. Sales tax is estimated at almost $13.5 million, or about 19% of the total proposed general fund revenues. We do continue to budget sales tax again as if the Rule 3.334 is in effect. And again, same as crime control, this budget is based on a 5% increase in sales tax over the adopted fiscal year 23 budgeted sales tax. So as you can see from this graph, the majority of revenue received by the general fund is from property tax and sales tax. These two revenue categories account for $57.4 million, or 82.5% of the general fund revenues. The remaining 6 categories represent almost $12.2 million, or 17.5% of the general fund revenues. One other category, revenue category that I would like to touch on is the administrative services category, which is represented by the green area of the chart. This revenue source is the amount that is paid by other funds to the general fund for services, again, such as human resources, finance, IT, facilities, fleet maintenance, and legal. Those items are paid for by the general fund and provided by the general fund to these other funds. And as I mentioned, crime control is one of the funds that pays for that, as well as water sewer pays about $2.2 million to this fund. And those costs, that was based on a cost allocation study that was performed in 2020. Next, I'll cover general fund expenditures, and this slide shows expenditures by function as well as classification. Total general fund expenditures are approximately $75.9 million. This is a decrease of about $1 million from the fiscal year 23 adopted budget. This next slide removes the amount included in the expenditures to fully fund the capital and enterprise solutions replacement funds, so that we can focus on the amount of expenditures supporting the operations and maintenance of the city, which is about $69 million, or 6.64% increase, which equates to about a $4.3 million more is included in this budget than in the fiscal year 23 budget. Returning to this slide, I would like to begin with the mint green area of the graph, and this is going to be a discussion of expenditures based on classification. And the mint green represents salary and benefits, which make up 60% of total expenditures. The proposed fiscal year 24 budget for salary and benefits is $2.3 million, or 5% higher than the fiscal year 23 adopted budget. And that's because a 3.5% increase in salaries for all general and public safety employees is included in the budget. In addition, the fiscal year 24 proposed budget includes 2 additional positions that were based on council feedback. First is the Community Information Services Division requested a communications specialist, and then the Community Development Department requested the addition of a village concept coordinator. Both requests are to support council's initiatives and the 2040 strategic plan that was driven by the community. Next is the service area, which is the pink section of the chart. Services total about $13.2 million, or 17.4% of total expenditures of the general fund. Services is about $1.4 million, or 11% more than fiscal year 23 adopted. The fiscal year 24 proposed budget does include about $1.1 million for the food truck park project, as well as retail attraction consultant. And then the next classification I'd like to point out are the transfer and capital outlay classifications. These are represented by the green and grayish section of the chart. These 2 classifications represent about $10.9 million, or 14.4% of the total expenditures. This is where the amount, the $6.8 million, which is needed to fully fund the capital and enterprise solutions replacement funds, would be recorded, and that's to fully fund those for the next 5 years. The $6.8 million will be transferred to those 2 funds, the capital replacement and the enterprise solutions funds, if the proposed budget is adopted. These lines also include $3.1 million being transferred to the Infrastructure Maintenance Fund for facilities, traffic, streets, sidewalks, alleys, and ADA projects. The remaining $1 million is for capital outlay, which was first communicated during the town hall meeting in April. For example, it's for the storage building for vehicles used at the Life Safety Park City to teach children about traffic safety. It's to replace fitness equipment at the core, to replace the canopy at LSP, and then replacing the charger and balancer for fleet was also included in the capital amount. And again, all of those items were presented at the town hall meeting. So these four classifications represent almost 92% of the expenditures of the general fund, with the remaining two classifications making up 8%. This next slide shows expenditures by function, which is showing you that public safety continues to be the largest piece of the pie and includes fire and police. And then next is the general government. However, it is at 26.36 because this is where combined services is, and that's the division that includes the transfer out of the general fund into the replacement funds. The next fund is the debt service fund. No changes were made to this budget since the July 27th budget workshop. This fund is used to account for the principal and interest on the outstanding debt. This fund derives its revenue from the property tax rate, and it's the property tax revenue is represented by the blue section of the chart on the left. The property tax necessary to fund the principal and interest due in fiscal year 24 on the bonds outstanding is almost $7.4 million. Interest earnings is estimated at $10,000, and then the transfer in totals almost $3.2 million, and it's shown as the gray section. And that represents the amount being transferred from the Water and Sewer Fund and the Coppell Recreation Development Corporation Fund for their portion of the principal and interest payments on certificate of obligation bonds issued for water, sewer, and CRDC projects. The expenditures associated with servicing all of the certificate of obligations and general obligation debt totals about $10.6 million. With interest paid on the debt, it's budgeted at about $3.3 million and is the green area on the graph on the right. The yellow area represents bond principal, which is almost $7.3 million. And then agency fees is the sliver that you see at $10,000. Total general obligation and certificate of obligation tax-supported debt is outstanding is $65.2 million, with repayment being fairly rapid, with 68% being retired over the next 10 years and 93% being retired in 15 years. Of course, these percentages would decrease if bonds are issued, and then they would increase if bonds were retired early. All bonds are currently outstanding are to be repaid by 2041. Next are the special revenue funds and internal service fund. The city has 21 funds that are classified as special revenue funds and 3 funds that are classified as internal service funds. Each special revenue fund has a dedicated revenue source, and the expenditures are restricted to a specific purpose. The revenue source for the first 6 shown in the first column are from fines and forfeitures. So, for example, traffic tickets. The red light enforcement fund was used to record red light camera violations, and the red light cameras were removed in 2019. So the red light enforcement fund is no longer has a revenue source, and the fund balance of this fund is being used to pay for the purchase of the Axon cameras used by the police department. Once that contract is complete, this fund will go away. The last fund shown in the first column is the hotel occupancy tax fund, and this fund receives its revenue source from the hotel occupancy tax paid by the hotels in Coppell as well as the short-term rentals. The funds shown in the second column receive their revenue from various sources. For example, the donation special revenue fund is where we record donations that are received from individuals and businesses who specify how they would like their donations to be used. The drainage utility district revenue is from the stormwater fee on the water bills, and then the Rolling Oaks Memorial Cemetery revenue source is from those who purchase burial rights and other services from the cemetery. So these 18 special revenue funds do not receive any funding from property tax or sales tax. The three special revenue funds shown at the bottom of the column, bottom of column 2, right before the internal service fund section, do receive their revenue from sales tax, and those are again the Crime Control and Prevention District, the Infrastructure Maintenance Fund, and then the Coppell Recreation Development Corp. These funds do not receive property tax. Their revenue source is sales tax. Specifically, the Infrastructure Maintenance Fund and the Crime Prevention District, they both receive sales tax equal to 0.25%. Sales tax collected by the Infrastructure Maintenance Fund is used for street maintenance, and the sales tax again collected by the Crime Control and Prevention District is used for crime prevention programs. The CRDC, or the Coppell Recreation Development Corporation, that fund receives sales tax equal to 0.5% for projects that qualify under 4B legislation. And this is also where the revenue and expenditures of the Art Center both of those items are recorded there. CRDC Debt Service Fund does receive a portion of the sales tax collected to repay the principal and interest on Coppell Recreation Development Corp's revenue bonds that are outstanding. The remaining 3 funds are internal service funds. The city's internal service funds are the self-funded health fund, the capital replacement fund, and the enterprise solutions replacement fund. And these funds are used to account for the cost of goods or services provided by these funds to other funds or departments of the city. And the last fund is the Water and Sewer Fund. No changes were made to this fund since the last budget workshop on July 27th. The Water and Sewer Fund is classified as an enterprise solutions fund. The enterprise fund, those funds are used with the intent to recover the cost of providing goods or services through user fees and charges. Proposed water and sewer revenue is $18.9 million and is approximately $600,000 less than the adopted fiscal year 23 budgeted revenues. As shown on this slide, the major source of revenue is the sale of water. The city receives 64.4% of the revenue budgeted, or about $12.3 million from this revenue source. This is up about $200,000 from last year, and the increase is solely based on adding customers from a couple of developments within the city. The next largest source of revenue for the Water and Sewer Fund is the grayish area, which is the sewer treatment service. So the fund receives about 33%, or $6.3 million, from this revenue source. This is down, and the decrease is based on winter averaging, which provides a sewer to be billed at the same amount each month, which is based on a customer's winter average. So water sales plus sewer sales equals $18.6 million, or 97.6% of the projected revenues of this fund. The remaining 2.4%, or about $446,000, is revenue from interest income, impact fees, and other revenues. The proposed budget does not include water sewer rate increases at this time. The city has enlisted the services of a water sewer rate consultant, and the consultant will present the results of their study in November or December timeframe. Next, I'll go over the proposed expenses for the Water and Sewer Fund, which total about $20.8 million. This is an increase of about $3.4 million or $682,000. The increase in expense is the net impact of a decrease and a couple of increases. So the decrease is in the transfer out classification, which is the orange section of the graph, and that's because water sewer's portion of fully funding the replacement fund is less in the proposed fiscal year 24 budget than it was in the fiscal year 23 adopted budget. The increases are in the service category, which is the gray and largest portion of the graph, and the increase in the service classification is the result of two areas. The first is the increase in the cost of water of $364,000. The fiscal year 24 proposed budget for the cost of water is increasing because the rates charged by Dallas Water Utilities are increasing. The demand rate for water is increasing 2.4%, and the volume rate is increasing 13.9%. In addition, the fiscal year 24 proposed budget includes a $479,000 increase for the cost of sewer. TRA is Trinity River Authority, who does our wastewater collection, is increasing their total rate by 14.5%. So this next slide shows water and sewer expenses by division. And it shows that the cost of water and the cost of sewer make up 60% of the expenses of the water and sewer fund, and these expenses are contracted costs. Utility billing, utility operations, and combined services make up about 30% of the total expenditures, with debt service making up the remaining 10%. So this is a summary of the proposed budget, that it includes the anticipated revenues and expenditures for not only the general fund, but all funds of the city. The total impact on fund balance of all the funds of the city is a decrease of $8.2 million. The fund balance of the general fund is expected to decrease by about $6.4 million, and that is the result of fully funding the replacement funds. The water sewer fund retained earnings is expected to decrease $1.8 million because of the increase in the costs from Dallas Water Utilities and TRA. Plus, the budget includes the water sewers portion of fully funding the replacement funds, and then we did not make any adjustments to the water and sewer rates included in this budget that the budgeted revenues were built on. Again, a rate study is being performed, so we'll be able to determine if there's any adjustments and what those adjustments to the rates would be. The debt service fund balance is expected to decrease about $46,000, and the fund balance of the special revenue funds is expected to increase about $1.6 million. And that concludes my presentation of the proposed budget, and I'm happy to answer any questions on the budget.
Thank you very much. So this is a public hearing, and we had no one signed up to speak for this, for item number 10. So council, do you have any questions for Ms. Tien? Councilmember Bijou Matthews.
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Tien, thank you for the presentation. Could you please go back to the slide with the expenditure 6.64?
I'm not sure. Is this what you're talking
Yeah,
about?
this one. Yeah, this
Okay.
is right. So you mentioned the increase in expenses of 6.64. You mentioned some of them are salaries and benefits for employees. What are the other components in that?
So the increase is a 6.64% increase, but the actual increase is about $4.3 million. And about 2.2 of that is salary and benefits. 1.1 of that is the village salary and benefits, which includes the village concept coordinator and the communications specialist, as well as the 3.5% increase in salaries for all employees. There's also 1.1 million, which is the food truck park, that project that we were told to put into the budget, as well as the retail consultant. So 1.1 million was put in the budget for those two items. So that's leaves about 900,000 difference
So just a clarification, retail consultants will be hiring next year for some project?
For Old Town, I believe. All of those were my understanding came out of retreat and direction of council.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Nevels.
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Tien, I just want to say thank you so much for eloquently, in a nice, tight summary, explain what we've been doing the past few months, and letting people know, there's a lot that goes in the process. There's obviously several meetings that are made available for the public. As always, I've got colleagues up here that and myself included, that we'd love to see more people attend. But I just want to thank you specifically and your team for all the work that you guys put behind the scenes, and also helping facilitate the many meetings that we had, the various workshops, and just those types of things that people can attend so they can express their needs, their wants, their desires, and allowing us as council members the many opportunities to chime in, to have a say in the budget process. So we just want to thank you and your team. And honestly, I want to thank my other council members for dedicating the time that was spent to this. It's a lot of work, and we've got a great city, and it takes a lot of manpower hours to make that happen. So a special thanks to you and your team. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Walker.
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Tien, I just want to thank you and your team. You all have done an excellent job this year. I think particularly when we think about the fact that, we're all paying more for eggs and gas and all that sort of thing with the inflation that we have, and yet the city is a rather sizable consumer as well. And so, everything that the city is buying is costing us more than it did just a few years ago. Just a fleet truck today cost quite a bit more than it did just 3 years ago. So, this budget has been well crafted while we're all swimming into some fairly serious challenges. So I want to thank you for that, and your team for that, and all my fellow council members for a job well done. Thank you.
Keeping in mind that this budget was put together with the recognition that State Rule 3.334 may come to pass. So that is also part of the phenomenal ability to come up with a budget like this. Council, any other questions?
Continue on.
Continue on, please.
Thank you. So next is a public hearing on the tax rate. Pursuant to Section 26.05D of the Texas Property Tax Code, the governing body of a taxing unit other than a school district may not adopt a tax rate that exceeds the lower of the voter approval tax rate or the no new revenue tax rate calculated as provided by this chapter until the governing body has held a public hearing on the proposed tax rate and has otherwise complied with Section 26.06 and Section 26.065. The proposed tax rate of 0.491818 is higher than the no new revenue rate of 0.477650, but lower than the voter approval rate of 0.568570, which includes unused increments, and it is the rate required to be published. The Truth in Taxation worksheet tracks the differences between the adopted rate and the voter approval rate for the prior 3 years. Those differences are considered unused increments, and the sum of those prior 3 years is added to the current voter approval rate calculation to determine the voter approval rate with unused increments. This is the highest property tax rate that the council could adopt without going to the voters. The voter approval rate before unused increments is 0.491822. The proposed tax rate is less than this rate also. Because the proposed tax rate is greater than the no new revenue rate, a public hearing is required. This first slide shows the tax rate in total and then broken out between our maintenance and operations, or M&O, and the interest and sinking, or INS, portions of the rate. The maintenance and operations, which is the portion in of the tax rate that is to fund the operations of the city, and it's represented by the green portion of the bar graph. The other part is the interest in sinking. It's the blue portion of the bar graph, and this is the portion that's used to pay the principal and interest on the debt outstanding of the city. The proposed tax rate for fiscal year 23-24, again, is 0.491818 with 0.421666 or 85.74% being used to fund operations, and 0.070152 or 14.26% for debt service. The proposed tax rate of 0.491818 does raise $1,789,261 more in revenue from property taxes. Of this amount, $396,510 is from property added to the tax roll this year. The proposed tax rate of 0.491818 is 5.188% less than the current fiscal year 22-23 tax rate of 0.518731. This next slide shows the city's total valuation, which is $10,511,180,120, which is 9.25% higher than last year. The 9.25 or just over $890 million increase in taxable assessed valuation is the result of the average of 9.53% increase in residential property values, a 12.68 average increase in commercial property values, and then a 3.02% average increase in business personal property value. Overall, residential property continues to make up about 55% of total property values, with commercial making up 45%, and this is consistent with the last few years. This next slide is a breakout of new construction versus reappraisals. So included in the increase is the addition of new property totaling $80.6 million, and then about $758.6 million in reappraisals. So this slide tells us that the city is very close to build out, and that's important to know because the impact of Senate Bill 2 on Coppell is very different than that of a growing city. And that's because Senate Bill 2 requires you or allows you to carve out new construction before calculating the no new revenue tax rate. So what's the impact on a homeowner? This slide shows that the impact of the proposed tax rate on a homeowner receiving the homestead exemption. The average annual tax bill for the city for residential property with the homestead exemption will be $2,408.30 or $68.13 more than last year. And that equates to about $5.68 more per month than in the prior year. This next slide shows the impact of the proposed tax rate on a homeowner who is receiving the homestead exemption and an over 65 exemption. So the average tax bill from the city for a residential property receiving both of those exemptions will be $1,798.97 or $22.46 less than last year. This tax levy would be $1.87 per month less than in the prior year. And that concludes my presentation on the proposed tax rate, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. This is a public hearing. We did have one person signed up to speak, so Ms. Bailey, it's your time.
Hi, Barbara Bailey, 232 Plantation. Those last two numbers about the average tax bills, I don't know anybody with a $1,700 tax bill in Coppell. I don't know where that comes from. I have no clue. I don't know a soul that pays that. Or anybody that has just homesteaded and pays $2,408. I mean, you can go down to look on the Dallas County Appraisal District, you don't see numbers like that. So I don't know where they come from. But anyway, yeah, I wanted to mention that I really think that the city, when they send out the bulletin about the tax rate, again, it's half-truths. Yes, this is the lowest tax rate forever, but they're not telling you your taxes are still going up. And I think that's all misleading. I mean, what's with all the half-truths? What's wrong with just saying what's actually going to happen to you? Because you don't do that. Nobody does it. The employee people that put out that stuff, they don't tell you the whole thing. They tell you half of it. Anyway, you all ought to know the economy's going downhill, and there's more bankruptcies and foreclosures. But I would like to also mention about, like, since I was looking at my street getting redone, like they had, for example, in terms of saving money, that rock haulers were going all over the place, breaking the streets. And I talked to the engineer, and he just sort of blew me off. And then I called and talked to somebody in Public Works. It was some manager. I don't know who it was. It was a guy, but I didn't write it down. And I was like, the rock haulers are everywhere. They're destroying the streets. There's holes, you know, like if you go down Spanish Moss and Plantation are the worst. Big holes in the street. And they go, well, that's okay because, you know, we have that planned and, you know, we don't care that it got ruined because, I'm paraphrasing, of course, because this is a while back, last summer, a year ago. But, you know, they said, oh, well, that's scheduled to get done on blah, blah, blah day, so we don't care. Well, as a taxpayer, you know, for the people that are paying for this, you ought to care because they could have saved that street, put it off further, another 5 years, saved everybody a little money. You don't have to wreck stuff just because it's on a schedule of some kind, which I don't even understand. But, I mean, those rock haulers were on every street in my subdivision, and those are heavy. And that's just a ridiculous way to do business. I'm sorry. You don't wreck things and go, oh, it doesn't matter. Somebody else, you're going to pay for it anyway. I'm sorry. I just think that whole thing, I mean, watching what the city did on my street, not impressed at all. Not impressed from the engineering on down. I'm sorry. It's not impressed. And all these half-truths and misinformation, y'all really ought to stop it because it's really not nice. That's all I got to say.
We have no one else signed up to speak. Council, do you have any comments or questions for Ms. Tien? Councilmember Matthew.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Ms. Tien, for the presentation. Could you please go back to the slide where the 65 and older? No, the one more. One more. 65 and older, yeah.
This is the 65 and older if you're getting it for the
okay.
tax bill.
Yeah, yeah. Could you please explain to the public who is viewing how many residents are taking advantage of the 65 and older and disabled and veterans and as opposed to the regular folks?
So the last I looked, it was over 2,000 residents or 2,000 properties were receiving the over 65. And just to clarify, this is only the city's portion of the tax bill. When you receive your tax bill, you're receiving the county, the school district, and the city. So your tax bill is going to be much larger. I'm only showing you what we are responsible for and what we can control, which is the city's portion.
Councilmember Nevels.
Again, Ms. Tien, thank you for your presentation. And just to clarify, the way that you're calculating the $1,798.97 portion of the tax bill is based on the average assessed value of a home of someone over 65, correct?
That is correct.
All right. So yes, some homes may have higher value, so therefore their tax bill may be higher, their city portion may be higher, but some may be lower. And so that it'll be lower than this number, but we're just trying to establish a baseline and an average of what you might see to kind of give like a comparison, if you will. Is that my understanding?
Yes, you are correct.
All right, thank you, ma'am, for that
You're
clarification. I appreciate it.
So, that value comes from DCAT, is that correct? The average value?
So the average value based on the previous slide for the homestead, they provide that. The one for the over 65, we calculate, but they provide us the total value of over 65 and the number of parcels. So we're able to calculate that.
Thank you very much. Council, any other questions? I hate to ask, but because it's a calculation. I know that we've traditionally been around 21% of the total tax bill. Do you know what this next year is going to be?
I don't.
Okay,
I don't
I'm
know.
sorry.
Because I'm not sure what their tax rates are for sure. They haven't been.
Oh, they haven't been finalized, so we wouldn't know.
Right.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Premature. Council, any other questions? Thank you very much. Council, seeing no other questions, we do have items 9, 10, and 11 open. I will accept a motion. Or motions. Councilmember Nevels.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to close the public hearings on agenda items 9, 10, and 11 and approve agenda items 9, 10, and 11.
Thank you very much. Oh.
Yes.
There's no, I'm sorry. These are just to close the public hearings. There's no action to take on these.
Then I move to close the public hearings on agenda items 9, 10, and 11, and then stop talking.
Seconded by Councilmember Walker. All in favor?
Walker, Hinojosa, Smith, Carroll, Nevels, Jen, Matthew Hill in favor, none opposed, the motion carries.
Thank you very much. Moving on to item 12. Ms. Tien again.
Thank you. So there are 3 items before you this evening, and they can be discussed simultaneously if you'd like, but to comply with Local Government Code Section 102, the items must be voted on separately and in a specific order. First is consideration of approval of an ordinance adopting the 23-24 budget. And after the vote on the budget, you will consider approval of an ordinance to levy a 23-24 ad valorem property tax rate to support the budget. And that property tax rate is 0.491818. And then the last action will be ratification of the increase in property tax revenue. So we'll start with item 12. The item before you is for your consideration of approval is an ordinance approving and adopting the fiscal year 23-24 annual budget for the city of Coppell. The public hearing for this budget was held this evening. In addition to the public hearing, city staff held 4 budget workshops with city council, plus a public hearing on the Crime Control and Prevention District was held in June, and all were open to the public. The general fund expenditures are estimated at $75.9 million. When considering all funds included in the fiscal year 23-24 annual budget, the total expenditures are approximately $143.9 million. So in addition to the general fund, this budget includes the special revenue fund, the internal service funds, the water sewer fund, and the debt service funds. The Strategic Financial Engagement Department recommends approval of the budget as presented.
Councilmember Hill.
I'd like to make a motion to approve item 12.
Thank you. Seconded by Councilmember Carroll. All in favor?
Walker, Hinojosa, Smith, Carroll, Nevels, Jen, Matthew Hill in favor, none opposed, the motion carries.
Item 13.
Thank you. So now that the budget has been approved, the next step is to consider approval of a tax rate that will fund the budget that was just approved. Therefore, this item is being presented for approval to adopt the fiscal year 23-24 ad valorem tax rate. The agenda item references the published rate of 0.491818 per $100 of assessed valuation. The property tax rate is the total of the maintenance and operations and interest and sinking rates of 0.421666 and 0.070152 respectively. This rate is 0.026913 cents lower than last year's property tax rate. As a percentage, the proposed tax rate is 5.19% less than last year's tax rate. The property tax code's truth in taxation legal requirements for setting a property tax rate have been satisfied. A full-page ad was published sharing with the public that taxes were increasing, and the approval of this ordinance is required to fund the City of Coppell's fiscal year 23-24 annual budget. Staff recommends approval of this ordinance.
Thank you very much. Council, any comments or questions? Seeing none, I will accept a motion. There is some specific language that is required by the Texas Government Code, which has been provided. Should anybody feel the privilege? Councilmember Hill.
I move that the property tax rate be increased by the adoption of a tax rate of 0.491818, which is effectively a 2.97% increase in the tax rate.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Councilmember Hinojosa Smith, any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Walker, Hinojosa Smith, Carol, Nevels, Judd, Matthew Hill in favor, none opposed, motion carries.
Thank you very much. Item number 14.
So this last item is required pursuant to Section 102.007C of the Texas Local Government Code. When a budget raises $1 more of revenue from property tax than in the previous year, a separate vote of the governing body is required to ratify the increase. This separate agenda item is required because the fiscal year 23-24 annual operating budget will raise revenue, more revenue from property taxes than last year's budget. The Strategic Financial Engagement Department recommends approval of this agenda item.
Thank you very much. Anybody have any questions for Ms. Tien? I did have one that, when you said the $1, that excludes any new construction on that number. Is that correct?
Not for the budget raising. So this is separate. This is related to the budget, not the tax code.
Thank you very much. Council, I'll accept a motion. Councilmember Hill.
I'll do it all tonight. I make a motion to approve item number 14.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Councilmember Carroll. Any discussion? All in favor?
Walker, Hinojosa Smith, Carol, Nevels, Judd, Matthew Hill in favor, none opposed, the motion carries.
Well, thank you very much. This has been the Kim Tien night, and thank you for everything that you've done. We'll get to start working with you again next month, so thank you.
Yes.
And your department does a phenomenal job in putting together the budget, and even with State Rule 3.334 still looming in front of us, you've still got a lot of work to do, but thank you for everything you've done.
Thank you, and I want to just thank my team too. They've been great this year. So, thank you.
Okay, item 15 is the city manager report with project updates, future agenda, and directions from the work session.
And I don't feel offended at all that they're all from the SFE leaving when I'm getting ready to talk. Yes. Yeah, right. I'll remember that. All right. So forgive me for just a little bit because I've got some reading to do on the Tyler Munis upgrade. Y'all saw an announcement. That is our software package, and on September 14th and 15th, we will be upgrading our Munis software application. Online payments for permitting and utility billing will not be available for those 2 days. Additionally, the drive-through kiosk at Town Center will be offline for 2 days. For anyone wanting to make a payment, utility billing and community development will be able to accept a check in person or a credit card payment, either in person or over the phone. Please note that this is not a utility, there is no utility bill due during that time period. Utility bills are due on the 5th and the 20th of each month. So in addition, we know that the system being down may provide an inconvenience for some. Therefore, we will not assess any late penalties during the month of September. Residents will still be able to access their Get to Know Your HTO portal, but will not be able to access their citizen self-service portal. The upgrade will include additional security features and will require existing citizen self-service portal users, running out of breath, to reset their password when the system is back online. There will be no impact to new account turn-ons during the upgrade process. Lastly, community experience facilities like the Core Tennis Center and the Municipal Court are not impacted during the upgrade process. Just from a standpoint of the system itself, as mentioned, UB password reset instructions will be on the website. We are prepared to take calls with questions on the 14th and 15th, and we have more communications going out between now and then. People can leave a message over the weekend. We'll respond on Monday. We'll respond with money. Internal staff will be working through the weekend to put all payments in that were taken in over the 2-day period, and we'll be working over the weekend to do rereads for customers to ensure accuracy prior to billing. So that concludes the information on the Tyler Munis upgrade. The Moore Road Boardwalk is about 95% complete, looking at sometime in October finishing. The Duck Pond Park is about 35% complete, and again, that park is closed. Thweet Park, I just think they all do this on purpose. Thweet Park, the contractor is making progress. We're about 55% complete. South Beltline, the contractor is continuing to work on the medians and the traffic signals. The final phase from Hackberry to 635 is anticipated to begin by the end of the month, and it will take 4 to 6 months to complete. If you were out on Friday, you saw that the permanent generator at the Village Parkway pump station was delivered and is being installed, and it will take a couple of weeks to get connected, tested, and running. And then the DART work at MacArthur continues, so stay away from that intersection while that work is going on. That concludes my report, Mayor.
Thank you very much. So item 16 is mayor and council reports on recent and upcoming events. As I hope everyone is aware, we have entered the second stage of our water conservation plan, the Water Watch. As Mike Garza described earlier, we've been getting very close to the limit on our water usage, and this stage 2 has been significant, and with fingers crossed, we will stay out of any remaining danger zone, even though our temperatures are very high. As a result of our Water Watch, utility customers may only irrigate on specified days, so please visit the city's website for more information, including those days that you may water based on your address. The city of Coppell is requesting feedback for the city's Ford Task Force, which has released a survey, and this can be found on the city's website to gather feedback about housing options for Coppell's active adults and residents over the age of 55. This survey will be open until September 1st. And if you'd like to get involved in the community, now is the time to apply to serve on one of the city's boards and commissions. Learn more about these positions at the coppelltx.gov boards site on our website. The application period is from September 4th through October 1st. Item number 17, council committee reports concerning items of community involvement with no council action or deliberation. We only have one of these, which is item A, the report on the Dallas Regional Mobility Coalition. Councilmember Carroll.
Thank you, Mayor. We took a break during the summer, so we only met a couple of times. The biggest thing, digesting what came out of Austin and the legislative session is the biggest thing we've been doing recently, still digesting what pertains coming out of that. Austin did approve $142 billion UTP for the next 10 years, so that's a big thing on how we're going to spend that money, or how the state's going to spend that money over the next 10 years on transportation. But other than that, there was nothing specific to Coppell, so I will end my report here.
I thought maybe you might like to include who the new incoming president for that board is, since that does pertain to Coppell.
Well, that pertains, the new chair is Don Carroll.
Well, congratulations.
So, thank you. Thank you.
I know him.
You're special.
Item number 18 are public service announcements concerning items of community interest with no council action or deliberation. Council, you have any PSAs? Seeing none, There was no necessary action from the executive session. The only item we have is we did have a work session that we were going to put toward the end. With the concurrence and just a nod of the heads, we can defer that to another session of the council meeting. No, she's not, I don't think. Do we want to?
We asked her to stay.
Oh, we did. Oh.
If we asked her to stay, we should. Yeah. We should not get out.
If she, I thought she was gone.
Is there some Jeopardy music we can play?
The time is 9:01, and we're going to recess from the regular session of the City Council and convene into work session in the first floor conference room. The public is invited to join us.
I am here tonight to update y'all on ridership data for workforce transit, and then also to seek direction on renewing the ILA, the interlocal agreement, for another year. So I'll go into more history in just a few minutes, but a quick update on just our current contract. The city is currently in the 10th month of a 12-month interlocal agreement with Denton County Transportation Authority to administer our workforce transit program. The partnership is set up just like it always has been, where DCTA administers the contract and handles all the administrative functions for the program for the city, and then LIFT provides the first mile, last mile connectivity between designated trans stops and Coppell businesses. The program is open to all Coppell businesses and their employees. And then tonight, we just need direction from you all to see if you are interested in renewing this contract, this ILA, and if you are, then we will bring that forward at a future meeting, hopefully next meeting, for approval. So I'm going to make the history quick because I think you all have heard this, so I'm kind of doing an abbreviated version. So the program was created in response to concerns from Coppell businesses about their inability to attract employees due to a lack of public transportation. So after a considerable amount of research and reviewing all possible options, staff felt that the best solution was to offer a test program, which is what we started, and we wanted to create or offer one that created the greatest amount of flexibility for employees for that first mile, last mile connection. So the program was designed to help us gauge the community's need for a workforce transit program, and staff could then also use the data to determine what a potential long-term solution would be for Coppell. The current partnership with DCTA and LIFT was the end result of all that research and review. And the interlocal agreement that we started with ran from October 1st, 2019 to September 30th, 2020. Since that time, City Council has renewed the ILA with DCTA 3 times to continue the service. And again, what we've heard is that it's been beneficial to both our businesses and their employees. So our current ILA began on October 1st, 2022, and it will expire on September 30th, 2023. Ridership data shows the program has continued to be utilized since it was created in 2019. So a few things we've learned: riders are coming from all 6 designated transit stops. They're traveling to a wide variety of businesses in Coppell. They're using the services 7 days a week and at all times throughout the day. And then the concentration of use was on the west side in the beginning, but you all had the foresight to go ahead and extend it to the east side from the very beginning. So our ridership has continued to grow on the east side as well. So that brings us to today. And so this is a chart to show our ridership data. We had a total of 1,392 rides in the fiscal year 1920. We had 2,277 rides in fiscal year 2021. We had a total of 2,281 rides in fiscal year 21-22. And then based on if we project from the 10 months that we have in our current ILA, we're targeted right now to hit around 2,300 rides before the end of this current fiscal year. This program is part of both our business attraction and our business retention strategies, because it helps us not only to attract businesses, but also to keep the businesses that we have. So approximately $23,200 has been spent this fiscal year for the program. There's been a total expenditure of approximately $108,000 since the beginning of the program in 2019. And so staff is requesting for you all to give consideration to renew the ILA for an additional 12 months so we can continue the program through September 30th, 2024. We have already included funds for this program in next year's budget, just so you all know, just in case you all decided. So if City Council is agreeable to this extension, I'll bring the ILA back at your next meeting. All other aspects of the program will remain the same. The transit stops, the ridership costs, all of that will remain the same. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. And in case you want to see our transit stops, those are the current ones that are in the program where they can pick up and transport them to a Coppell business.
I read in your, go ahead, John.
How do we distinguish whether they're actually taking the ride to work or or is there a way?
So currently right now, and I think I've mentioned this in years past, when we started the program, we used pretty generic codes, and we just kind of had one for the west side and one for the east side, because we were somewhat limited in the number of codes we had. Since then, they have been able to basically go back in and add some specific codes for some of the businesses. So for a lot of them, we can see that they're using that business code. Now, I can't tell you with certainty that they're going to that business, but I don't know that they would be going anywhere else. They're clearly an employee of that business in order to have that code.
Okay, so if they have the code, they could actually use it any time throughout the week, whether they're actually going to that business or not, because we don't track where they're going, right?
Well, so it's geofenced, so it can't go anywhere outside of Coppell, if that's
Right.
what you're asking.
No, I mean, it's within Coppell, but it's...
Correct.
Do we have an idea about how many unique users there are?
We've got that as part of our report. I didn't include that on here, but we do get that information. So it's anywhere from, if I can remember, it's anywhere from 10 to 20 every month that it's unique riders.
Yeah, well, I was doing the calculations at 2380 and then divided by 250 working days. It's like 10 people. I'm just wondering, is it the same 10 people or is it a bunch of people?
So it does it by month. It doesn't compare it month to month,
Right.
if that makes sense.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
So didn't we originally budget back in 2019 $100,000
We did.
for this?
When we created this, we started with $100,000, and then we learned after the first year that we didn't need that much, so we dropped it down to 50 for each year following that.
And we've only spent $23,000 this year?
So our cost per ride is going down right now. And again, the hard part with Lyft is, the rate fluctuates. based on peak times and and distance also. So the cost of individual rides, our average cost per trip right now has gone down from previous years. So.
Do we,
In your,
Josh? No, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Joe?
Oh, so, do we know how they assess, how Denton County Transportation assesses the administrative fee? It seems kind of large in relation to what we're using.
I do think it's a lot of time on their part to keep those administrative fees going and to manage the contract. But that was a set percentage that they set in the contract. And I apologize, I don't remember what that percentage is right now.
Are they providing the same service along the lines of the way they're providing it to us, to any other communities?
They have, I don't know if they still have those programs, but at the time when we created this, they were doing this program with other communities.
Okay, thank you.
And have you gotten any feedback, Mindy, from businesses that saying, hey, thank you for doing this? It's making a difference.
Yeah, we have heard from the businesses that this has really helped them in whether the staff ends up using it or not, it helps them in attracting staff because they're able to offer that as an option. And you know, one of the things that we've talked about is, as you know from the design of our community, the majority of the people that work on the west side don't live in Coppell. And so a lot of them were struggling because somebody could go work at a warehouse easily close to home, so a family member could get them there. So this has opened up the opportunity for the field of applicants that they could draw.
Jim?
So what, on the east side, how is that different from, how many people are food service employees, how many are light industrial? Do we have any idea?
We don't have any light industrial on the east side necessarily.
Right,
The way that,
right.
so, I can look at the ridership. Clearly our ridership on the east side is less than our ridership on the west side, but it is increasing on the east side. So the likelihood of it being something other than industrial is
Sure.
clearly on the east side.
Yeah, I actually mixed two questions in one, but.
Oh, okay.
No, yeah, so I was just kind of curious, do we know, how many are servicing food service, how many light industrial? And then we know what they're coming to the east side now for, why that's changed? Any insight into that?
I think, again, it's just opened up the opportunity for people to be able to get jobs on the east side that maybe, and again, the complaint about employees wasn't coming just from our industrial sector. It was coming from, you will hear that all across the board, in multiple cities, but especially here, that it's hard to attract employees.
So do you think its greatest value is just that employers can offer it as opposed to the fact that people are actually using it?
I think that's, yes, I think
It's
that is
just a
what
good
they're.
part of the pitch.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
John? Do you know how many businesses are participating in this program?
Yeah, right now, so when we started, I believe we had 7 businesses that were participating, and now we're up to about 15 that are participating. So we continue to do a push. That was part of when we started the program. It was right before COVID, so we didn't have a lot of ability to promote the program, so we have taken active measures since then to continue. And so a lot of our newest members are the new businesses that are coming in that it wasn't even available to in the beginning. So.
And I'm guessing you have a breakdown as to how many employees are actually taking advantage of this program from what business?
No, not necessarily. Again, we know which code they're using, but I don't have, the company doesn't report to me. We've got 7 employees that are using it. They just provide the code to their employees, so those that need it can use it.
Don?
Actually, you just answered the question I had. I'm in support of the re-upping this. This is a good incentive for our businesses. And this is a challenge that even some of our neighboring cities or bigger cities that have public transportation in their city. They still have trouble with first mile, last mile issues of getting to the actual business from the bus stop or train stop. So it's not just because we don't have public transportation. So I think for what the trend we continue to have, and I love the fact we're continuing to push for more businesses to take advantage of this or use it at least to encourage employees to come work here. I think it's it's money well spent from a business or economic incentive for our people.
So last question for me, or only question for me, is in your memo there was a comment about expectation that when the DART station opens that we would see an increase. You have any guess on what that's going to be?
I don't. I had another question about that before, and we can only assume that when it's closer for them, it makes more logical sense for people to be utilizing that. And at that point, their ride will be even shorter. So the average cost per trip will most likely be shorter, will be less.
Is there any way we can get DART to promote that?
Well, it may be difficult since it's DCTA that the program is through. We met with DART, when we did all of this, we met with DART at the same time that we met with DCTA, and they weren't offering this kind of program. So.
Is there any value to the chamber promoting it?
They do, and
They
so,
do?
yeah.
Actively.
Good.
Okay, any other questions? Are we good to go on this one?
Yeah, fine.
All right, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you all.
All right, sorry to keep you guys so late. The time is 9:16. We're recessing for work session, and we'll
Go out.
rejoin. Yeah, we'll go out and cancel the meeting. Not cancel.
Good job, Andy.
Never been in an accident, never got hurt.
All right, we have adjourned from work session. The time is 9:18. We are convening into the regular session of the Coppell City Council. There being no further action from executive session and there being no further business before this council, we are adjourned.